Hello and welcome to Norrathian Odyssey. I am your host, Ardwulf. Today we are going to talk about EverQuest II character creation, and I am going to show you some of the ins and outs of that, and some of the basic strategies for where to start your character. We're here at the character selection screen in EverQuest II. As a free player, I am actually on my free account at this time. You get 2 character slots. If you upgrade to silver, that goes to 4, and if you subscribe, it goes to, I think, 7. And you do get the ability to buy extra character slots in the store. They are 1,000 station cash each, which corresponds to $10 US, of course. But they do run sales on that occasionally, and of course they do run sales on station cash occasionally, and that's a subject that we will touch on in a future episode. This is my 4th account, actually. The main account, of course, is subscribed right now, but this is just a free account. We have one character here, Crunchy Time, and we are going to make a new character. So to do that, we will click on Create Character. Now we select a class first. The order of this is going to happen somewhat differently than it does in most MMOs. There are 4 archetypes: Fighter, Priest, Mage, and Scout, and within each archetype there are a bunch of different classes. Now as a free player, we don't have a lot of the classes available to us. We can purchase these individually in the store for 750 station cash. 1 station cash equals 1 cent, so it's 750. Those occasionally go on sale as well. That doesn't really matter for the purposes of our discussion here today, though. So we're just going to pick a random class, and I'm going to talk about each of the archetypes. The fighters are, of course, the tanks, and of course you have the Guardian and the Berserker, who are your basic, slightly more defensive and slightly more offensive tank, respectively, and they are your heavy plate armor wearing tanks. You have the Monk and the Bruiser, which do a little bit better DPS. Those are your light armored evasion tanks, and they are tanks. They can actually tank. Although the way tanking works in raids, you will have trouble tanking with either of those classes in a raid. And then of course you have the Shadow Knight and the Paladin, both of which have some. They're also heavy plate armor tanks, and they have some healing type abilities. The Paladin can heal directly, where the Shadow Knight can siphon life and things like that. Neither of them are usable as like a main party healer. They can assist the healer, but neither of class is going to be like a main healer for the group. The Priest. Now, you know what? I've never managed to play a priest in EQ2 besides I got to like level 6 at one point. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about these classes. But the Templar and the Inquisitor are the sort of good and sort of evil heavy plate wearing cleric-y tanks in the D&D sense. They, as I recall, heal mostly through HOTS. The Warden and the Fury are the Druids. They heal mostly through direct heals, and the Mystic and the Defiler are the 2 Shaman classes, and they heal mostly through wards, which means that they mostly don't heal. They can heal a little bit, but mostly they act as healers by preventing the target from taking damage in the first place. Here we're getting into my forte. With the mages, we have the 2 sorcerer classes, Wizard and Warlock. The Wizard is more direct damage, the Warlock is more AoE. You have the Illusionist and the Coercer, which of the pairs, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, are kind of the most different. They're both pet classes. The Illusionist can summon a pet duplicate of themselves that is also an Illusionist and has access to all of their Illusionist stuff. And the Coercer is also a pet class, but instead of having a regular permanent pet, he will actually charm a mob out in the world to act as his pet. And eventually the control of the Coercer on that mob will break, and the Coercer will have to rebind it or kill it. So that is always a factor with the Coercer. They're a pretty tricky class to play. And then we have the Conjurer and the Necromancer, which again are both pet classes. The Conjurer is more kind of tanky pets and DPS pets. He summons elementals. The Necromancer, of course, controls undead and has more abilities to push health and life around. Now we have the Scout, and we have a special case here. We have the Swashbuckler and the Brigand. Now these are sort of your basic fighting rogue type classes. Again, one's slightly good, one's slightly evil. They're both really neutral. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. We have the Troubadour and the Dirge, which are your two Bard classes. These are very highly desired classes in raids. They are support classes primarily. All these scout classes function very similarly. They are you'll find that positioning between you and the foe is very important. They have a lot of abilities that can affect the foe, but only from behind or from a flank. So positioning is very important. That's true of the Troubadour and the Dirge as well. But they also have a lot of support abilities, a lot of buffs that are important in raids. And you have the Ranger and the Assassin, and these two are also kind of different. The Ranger is like your basic non-spell DPS guy. It functions pretty much as you would expect a Ranger to function. It is not a pet class. The Assassin is basically a heavy-handed, heavy-hitting DPS class, but it's in melee instead. And these are both kind of glass cannon classes. Now, the 7th class is the one that was added in the recent Age of Discovery expansion, the Beast Lord. And the only way to get access to that class is to buy Age of Discovery. You cannot buy it individually. The Beast Lord is a pet class that has, unlike the other pet classes in EQ2, has a lot of ability to customize his or her pet. And they have a lot of additional control over their pets that the regular pet classes don't. This is the class that functions the most like a WoW pet class would. Particularly the Hunter, not so much the Warlock. The EQ2 Necromancer is sort of similar to the EQ2 Warlock, to the WoW Warlock, I should say. Okay, now every class, as you may have picked up, except for the Beast Lord, comes in a pair. Okay, so let's say I'm going to pick Guardian, which I may pick actually. What that means is that I'm going to start play as a Guardian. He's a heavy plate fighter, and he is going to be primarily focused on defensive abilities. He will generally fight with a shield and a single weapon. But at any time after level 10, I can change my alignment. And the Guardian and the Berserker are the main pair in each archetype is a neutral class, which means that they don't start with they can start with either alignment. When you change your alignment, you have the ability to, when you take citizenship in your new city, to change your class, which is a fairly unique feature to EQ2, to the opposite class in your pairing. And in many cases, they're pretty similar. The Guardian and the Berserker are not that different. The Berserker's a little more damage-focused. Berserkers will generally fight with a two-hander or with dual wield, where the Guardian will normally fight with a weapon and shield. But they're not that radically different. However, some of these combinations, like the Illusionist and the Coercer, the Conjurer and the Necromancer, and the Ranger and the Assassin, are extremely different and play completely different in play. So mostly the two classes are kind of mirror images of one another, and their abilities reflect that. But some of the pairs differ from that significantly. So we're going to pick, let's pick a swashbuckler. It doesn't really matter. And we'll click next. Now we are going to pick our race, and this will determine our initial alignment and what zones we can start in. Now, as a free account, I can only pick from 4 of the 8 neutral races. I can pick barbarians, erudites, half-elves, or humans. Can I at least see the character models? Nope, I cannot see the character models for the locked races. I may have to show you that in a future video. But you can pick evil races. These have to start in an evil city. You can pick good races. These have to start in a good city. Neutral races can start in either an evil or a neutral city. Now, good versus evil in EQ2, it works sort of like a faction in a faction-based MMO, but not exactly, because you can change your faction and you can be neutral to the two factions. And this has a relatively small effect on gameplay. It does mean that if you try and wander into a city of the opposite alignment, particularly Kinos or Freeport, which are the two big cities in the game, the guards will kill you on sight. And they're pretty tough, so they will probably kill you on sight, unless you're max level, in which case maybe you can take them on, but I've never tried that or really even seen it done. In this case, we'd like maximum selection. We're going to pick the Barbarian. Okay? Now, here's another important quirk in the EQ2 character setup. You see, she's kind of weird looking, I think. And none of the starter armor, with the possible exception of the druid armor, looks any good at all. You will replace it within 10 levels at the most. And the current starter cities all have a characteristic set of armor based on your archetype that you will get, and it all looks pretty good. I'm going to talk about the different character models in a minute, but let's go to character customization first. Now here you have a pretty wide array, and this game came out in 2005, so the fact that you had all these character customization options was pretty striking at the time. Nowadays, in retrospect, City of Heroes, which has an amazing character creation system as far as appearance goes, came out around the same time, so nothing really until Champions Online and All Points Bulletin really compared to it at the time. But you have a lot of ability here to customize your character. You can make them taller or shorter. You can customize their skin color. You can make her darker, lighter, darker, lighter. We'll make her lighter. The woad is something particular to barbarians. Some races have this, and that's this sort of tattoo pattern that you can change. You can change a bunch of stuff about the ears. You can give her big ears or small ears. You can make her ears high or low, which makes, these are all pretty subtle too. It's basically impossible to make a really atrociously stupid looking character with this system. You can change the cheeks, whether they are thin, and I can't even see the difference here. This is relatively subtle. This is something that will, you can see it there. And you can change her cheekbones to high cheekbones or low cheekbones. You can change the chin from narrow, actually, let's go to the front again, wide or narrow. You can change it from short to long and thick and thin. I'm not going to actually, I'll show you all these options, but I'm not actually going to like try and explain them all. The cheeks can be, we already did that. You can change the eyebrow, the tilt of the eyebrow. You can, so you could change that. You can make them curved or straighter. You could make them angle down or angle up. You could, of course, change the eye color. So you can give her blue eyes right here. And you can change the hair. Now, there's a lot of different hairstyles in EQ2, and they all actually have names, oddly enough. You can, of course, change the color. If I want to make her blonde, I can go there, and I can change the highlight color to white if I want to make her really super blonde, or yellow if I just want to make her less blonde. You have a lot of different, and there's no way I can show you all of these. They are different for each race, but there's a lot of different options. Now, here we'll actually go into the world, and I have the choice between two cities, New Halas and Kelethin, and that choice is based on my race. I have chosen a barbarian, and they're neutral, but they're kind of a newer. Their city's kind of new, so they can't choose the evil cities. So we'll start in New Halas. We'll start in Kelethin, actually. I think it's a slightly better looking zone. I think New Halas plays through a little better. Now again, these are the two good cities. The two evil cities are Gorowin, which is the Sarnak city, and Neriak, which is the Dark Elf city. Of the two, all four of these areas are pretty good. They're pretty modern starter zones at this point, and they will all take you from level 1 to about level 20. But originally, when the game launched, there were two starter zones that were basically the same starter zone, or they were very similar. And those have been those older starter zones had really not aged well, and they have been phased out. At least for now. I'm kind of hoping, I always liked them, I'm kind of hoping they will eventually reappear. They're still in the game, actually. If you have a character who's been sitting around a while that's in one of those older starter zones, that character is still accessible, and you can wander around those zones to your heart's content. It's like a small island, and there's two different islands, one for good, one for evil. And the zone layout and quest progression is pretty similar. And they would take you to about level 6 to 8. And then you would go to your city, Kinos for good or Freeport for evil, and you would go through some like city suburb type zones. that would take you the rest of the way to level 10, and then you would go to like a big outdoor zone, either the Common Lands for the evil characters based out of Freeport, or Antonica for good characters based out of Kinos. So we're going to pick Kelethin, which is the sort of wood elfy type city. We're going to enter a name pretty much at random. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about servers, because this is kind of important. The servers that you want to keep an eye on are Nagafen, which is the PvP server. PvP is not a particular strength of EQ2, but the Nagafen server, despite the fact that it's on light population right now, is relatively well populated. It's kind of open PvP based on your alignment. You can get ganked out in the world, so be wary if you're going to play on that server. The classes are not particularly balanced well with PvP in mind, so I personally have no issue with that. But bear in mind that depending on your class, you may be more or less effective in PvP. Freeport is the old free-to-play server back when you could only play on that one server, and it's got a very high population. We're filming this kind of at an off hour, so the loads are all medium. Antonia Bale is the remaining role-playing server. It's the server I normally play on. We're going to go with Freeport in this case, and its population, Antonia Bale's population, is also very high. So, and the populations on Everfrost and Butcher Block are also pretty good. I've heard bad things about the population on some of these other ones. I've personally played back in the day on Permafrost and Guck and never noticed a particular problem, but that kind of thing tends to change over time. I can tell you that, and this is something that I can't really provide full details on in the context of this video, but there was the young child of in real life of an EQ2 player with a terminal illness a few months ago, and he has since passed on. And he really liked just running around in EQ2. He wasn't really playing, but since he couldn't go play outside, he liked to run around in the wilderness in EQ2. And the entire server, hundreds of players, came together to construct a wilderness zone using EQ2's amazing housing system to so that this boy would have like a theme park to play in. And it was a pretty amazing story. It was covered by Massively and in a number of other important places. And that was on Guck, which is one of the servers that sometimes people say has low population. So I take that kind of talk with a grain of salt. There have been rounds of server merges in the past. In my experience, I don't have a problem with player populations in EverQuest II. So we're going to hit play, and per my typical policy, we are going to show you all of EQ2, including the load screens. If the load screen took 10 minutes, you'd probably want to know about it. I am playing on relatively high settings here. I can choose to import user interface settings, which I'm not going to choose to do because it's something that I want to show you from. I can import from another character, and yes, there are two characters named Ardwulf. We're going to cancel that, and right when we start playing, we're going to get these tutorial tips, which is something we're not going to go into now. We're going to cover one more topic in our tutorial and character creation here. Right when you start playing, you'll get this quest. If you have 14 days from taking the quest to gain levels up to 20, and if you get it, you get some money, a reasonable amount of money, and a title. And the title is different based on your alignment. So we'll take the quest. We're not really going to play this character, and we'll minimize this, and I'm going to show you something else. And you get these older tutorial pop-ups too. If you're completely new to EverQuest II, by all means read those things, but nothing here control-wise functions terribly differently than it would in another MMO. Now, here's an option that we don't have in other MMOs, though. We have a completely parallel set of character models. They're called the alternate models. They are sometimes called the Soga models because they were originally developed by Sony Games Japan for the game's launch in Asia, and they were subsequently brought over as optional models for the North American game. And eventually those Asian servers were actually merged into the North America Europe servers as well. So none of those things are around anymore. what we can do is right now the character models will default when you first start playing EverQuest II to the Soga models, and not every race has new models, like the Ixar, the reptile men, and the trolls, and several others have the same models. But a lot of the races have alternate models, and every time one of these boxes is checked, then the alternate models are on. So we can, for some reason, not check this, but we can turn off all models. And you know, this is a frog lock. They're the frog people. And these are the Fae. They're the fairies. These are both playable races. Originally, you had to unlock the frog lock, but you don't anymore. So from this, the options panel, you can choose to turn off models or turn on models. Because I've selected the barbarian in character creation and I haven't changed it, I can't change that particular model. But we can cancel this, go back out to character creation. This is a camp-based game, so it is going to take 20 seconds while I talk, while we log back out to character creation, and we'll see the change there. Some people prefer the older EverQuest II models, which definitely have a distinct style. I hesitate to call it a more realistic style. It's definitely a less anime-ish style. Go back to the character screen here. Now we'll zoom in a little bit. We can click on alternate appearance here, and this is the traditional EverQuest II original character models that the game launched with. The barbarian race, by the way, is do not think Viking barbarian when you think of these guys. Think of Celtic barbarian. They have the weird woad on the faces, and the hairstyles tend more toward red than blonde. And the things that are different here, for one thing, you have a slider for character age. You can make her younger or older, which you don't have with the alternate character models. And it's not the greatest effect in the world, but it's kind of cool if you're playing like a wizard or something like that and you want them to be kind of old. And you'll notice that the hair is all different for the original models. So sometimes you'll sort of like the alternate models better, but you'll like the hair better from the original models, and you'll end up going with that for that reason. And I actually like the female hair in for the barbarian in particular. And most of the races, with the exception of like the sort of more monstery races, like the Ixar, the trolls, and the Karens, who are the cat people, do have these alternate models. So you have two choices, and you can turn them on or off individually by race and by gender. So if you like the old female barbarian models, but you want everything else to be the new models, you can turn that on that way in the options panel in the game. And that will cause all characters of that race and gender to display in that way in the world. So you won't see any old model female barbarians if you have new model female barbarians turned on. The woad patterns, by the way, there's not a huge selection of these, but they are also different depending on. And I actually, like I said, I prefer, different people will prefer different things. I found these old character models kind of off-putting when I first started playing EverQuest II back in 2007, but they have since grown on me, and I pretty much play with all of them on except for the ogre, which I think just looks kind of dope or dopey, I should say, in the original models. I don't think it looks particularly cool. Or in the new models, I think it looks a little bit better. So other than that, but you can tailor that to your preference. So this is the conclusion of the brief character creation walkthrough in EverQuest II. Join us for more episodes of Norrathian Odyssey on this channel. There is a link below to my website at ardwulfslair.wordpress.com and links to add me to your social networks on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook. And we have a whole channel here on YouTube that you can subscribe to for more episodes of Norrathian Odyssey and other stuff as well. We have another show called Ardwulf Presents, which you may also be interested in, so check that out. We're going to cancel here, and we're going to go, because we canceled, we went back to the Soga model. We're going to cancel here and wrap this video up. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll tune in next time.